the thing that comes to mind right now with logical fallacies is like a little YouTube video that I've seen. It's not really considered art because it was actually trying to explain how Black people are always poor. And it did what it did is it said somehow it set up how poor people have become poor because of the government or something. And then it immediately said, therefore, all Black people struggle with this, which was just an obvious
That
logical
doesn't follow.
fallacy. What'd you say?
You need a few more steps to get there if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pinedo Brothers Podcast. I'm JP and I got my brother.
Peter, right here.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're the Pinedo Brothers, Catholic filmmaking brothers working to revitalize the world of Catholic art through film. And sometimes that means just telling stories about faith, not necessarily faith films. That topic is exactly, that distinction, is exactly what we're talking about with our very special guest. Casey, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Casey in the house.
Yes, we are so grateful to have Casey Quayo in the house today. We met Casey back in Los Angeles when we were living again, Vida Loca. And Casey is an audio engineer who's worked with everyone from Jay-Z to John Mayer and everything that's in between. But of late, that you're actually transitioning a little bit towards now that you've moved to Nashville, you've also escaped the craziness of Los Angeles, and you're moving a little bit towards the more Christian music kind of scene. Is that right, Casey?
Yep. That's what I'm trying to do. And Nashville is the place to do it. Much better than LA. So
yeah, that's right. And folks, if you want to check out A Blast from the Past, Casey and I used to do a podcast together called Poets and Lunatics. That was a lot of fun. That's actually before we were married, right? Like now we're both married and have kids. And I think neither of us were married back then.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
So if you want to hear what single JP and Casey sounds like, you should check out Poets and Lunatics. I'll leave a link in the description for it all. All right. So this here podcast, we're talking about the distinction between art and propaganda. It's something that Peter and I have hinted about, but hopefully in this little podcast, this next set time that we have together, we're going to actually define what that means, what the difference is, and then show some examples of what one and the other would be, what the other would look like. Basically, what we want to see is what is a propaganda piece, and then how is that different from just a piece of art that has a good message. I think that you can have a good message in a piece of art. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's kind of what I'm positing here. But I'm also making a distinction between that and propaganda. And I think we could try and dive into some of that. What do you all think, guys? Shall we?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, I have a couple ready to go. However, Casey came with songs that we could listen to. So I thought maybe that might be a fun way to start out. Casey, do you mind if we start with your examples?
No, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and play.
Come all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
My daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Oh, workers, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab or will you be a man?
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Okay, so that was Which Side Are You On by Peter Seeger.
Yep.
Okay.
Nice.
Pretty obviously propaganda, right?
No, I think that was the height of art. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's very
Unbiased
funny.
opinions.
I don't dislike it right off the bat.
Right.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's very obviously propaganda. But what made you choose it as a example of propaganda, Casey?
It's one of the only ones I could find.
Really?
No, it was just an obvious, easy one, and then I also kind of wanted to juxtapose it against the other one that I'm not really 100% sure if it's actually propaganda or not. I would be curious what you guys think, but I think this one just kind of is a good example. That's all, of something that it's not too difficult to question whether it is or isn't propaganda.
Yeah, you definitely. And okay, so we're taking it apart. What makes it so obviously propaganda? I think we would say the medium is at the service of the message in every way. The medium is at the service of pushing, and by medium I mean the music. And I'm purposefully not choosing the word art here because you don't really see it as art. Because of how the medium is is the servant. So I think that I also disagree with the message. At first I was thinking that that it was about like the Union and Civil War, but the Union in the Civil War, and then I was like, oh, it's very obviously just about workers' unions.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
I was just going to give you a quick background here on Wikipedia. It's from 1931. There were miners and mine owners that were in a struggle called the Harlan County War. And I guess the miners were on strike. And one of the leaders of the union had his home broken into by the sheriff. And he wasn't there, but his family was. And I guess they kind of like just terrorized them a little bit. That's what it says here. I don't know exactly what that means. But right after that, the next day, this song was written by Florence, who I think was the wife, actually, of the guy named Reese, who was the union leader. So that's very interesting. Yeah. Well, I've loved the folksy homespunness of it. That little banjo plucking. It's actually, I really liked the stylistic, the impression I got from it. But at the same time, I'm not very, I guess I'm more on guard with that because I would be less on guard if it was about the Civil War, if it was singing about the Union. But unions definitely can be bad as well. I'm not saying all unions are bad, but there's a sordid history of unions just acting like mafiosos, on their own. And so I'm hesitant to be like, oh, this is, I like this or I don't like this. But it definitely seems like propaganda. And I'm wondering if the fact that I don't like unions very much to begin with also makes me dislike it or be more hesitant. Well, obviously, right? Because you said at first you thought it was the Union in the Civil War and you were liking it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I feel like for me, it's not so much the message. It's just that the imbalance of the message that makes it not a piece of art, because it's just shouting at you like this is the way it is. And if you don't do this, then you are, you're, I don't remember the exact wording, you're a terrible person.
A dirty scab.
Man.
Dirty scab. Yeah.
Exactly. It makes me
and
think
it's saying which side are you on too, it's trying to say divide people. I feel like that's part of it too.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense. I think it really, the black and whiteness of it, art has to really operate on shades of gray, because people are shades of gray, really. Like we're not two-dimensional or one-dimensional people when it comes down to it. Actions can be, I think, categorized good or bad, but people have a much harder time, especially in art. You shouldn't really be categorizing this is a bad character or this is a good character. You're just making fun characters. What do you guys think of that?
I think you see a lot of examples of that I'm thinking in terms of film, where it's like, yeah, you can have the character, like let's think of like old timey like cowboys, you know, like the black hat and the white hat. So like that, those archetypes that you can see, like the subtle or not so subtle, because everyone knows, you know, black hat means bad guy, white hat means good guy. But so you still have that like very black and white kind of the different characters. But also I think that in a lot of like, you know, old timey Western movies where they'd have that, they'd still have like that bad guy have their own motivations, you know, and their own kind of storyline. And so like, I think really when it comes to telling an artistic story or like having a piece of art there, it's not like just straight up, like you can have that kind of coloring, that black and white, you know, black hat, white hat, but the characters and the story itself can't be just like plain out, yeah, you don't do this, you're a scallywag or whatever the word was.
Yeah.
Scab.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, it's the difference between having a character say that. I think you could, in a very completely artistic song or piece, you could have a character singing that. But unless there's an opposing side to the equation, then if that's like the main voice of the piece, then it becomes stifled. The art is suffocated out of the room.
Okay, interesting. So I was just thinking about, I guess it's different then with music versus, I guess, film, because in film you almost always have a good guy and a bad guy. No, because it's in the film, right? So it can still be a unifying experience watching it, versus music, which I guess you could also have a good guy and a bad guy, but it doesn't happen often in the song. So that to me is one kind of obvious clue if there's a good guy and a bad guy in the song, but that doesn't define propaganda, does it?
Well, I'm wondering if propaganda would be, it's not that there's a good guy or a bad guy inside the medium of the piece, so inside the song or inside the film. But what propaganda does is it points very clearly and says there is a bad guy or there is a good guy in the world outside of this song. And if you are the good guy, then you're good no matter what. And if you're the bad guy, then that bad person is bad no matter what. Don't be that bad person. So maybe propaganda points to its own detriment outside of the world of the artistic medium it inhabits.
Yeah. And it does it usually in an untruthful way, I think.
Okay. That's good.
So in the song that we were playing, it said, for example, poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize, which is making it sound like the only way for poor people, you know, to survive is if the union organizes and fights against, you know, the coal mining company. But I doubt that that's the only way for them to have a chance.
A lot of poor folk have managed to do that without.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there is, I think, a lack of three dimensions when you see propaganda, and then there's also an element of untruth. So oversimplification and untruth in propaganda. For sure. Okay.
And just to add to that, trying to think if I heard it in this song, but also a lot of logical fallacies. So the thing that comes to mind right now with logical fallacies is like a little YouTube video that I've seen. It's not really considered art because it was actually trying to explain, I think, like how Black people are always poor or something like that. And it did is it said, somehow it set up how poor people have become poor because of the government or something. And then it immediately said, therefore, all Black people struggle with this, which was just an obvious
It
logical
doesn't follow.
fallacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
But
need
I think
a
it's
few more
easy to
steps.
do that in art. What'd you say?
You need a few more steps to get there if you're going to do that.
Yeah. Right. And it's easy to do that in art, I think.
Yeah, because there's so much smoke and mirrors in art, really. Like you have so many other emotional. It's not just pure logic in art. You're really playing with emotions more than anything. And so if you're playing with emotions, you don't need to have A, B, C. You can jump to D from A and then have Z and then Y and then B. It's just part of the fun.
Yeah. Which makes... Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you wanted to finish that thought, because I have a question kind of based off of what you're saying. So I don't know if it's going to veer you off too much.
No, go ahead.
Okay. But so what you kind of talked about when you're talking in terms of what is propaganda and what's not, I know you've mentioned it's talking about it. That song brought up some fallacies, some logical fallacies, and then it's presenting like kind of some untruths. And so I'm wondering, do you, in your opinion, do you think that propaganda it's only propaganda if it's not true? So I guess the question follow-up would be, is there such a thing as true propaganda? You know, like some kind of what we would say as a good guy is, you know, propagandizing something that might be true. So is that propaganda?
Yeah. So basically you're saying, is 85% of music propaganda?
Maybe, I don't know. What
I don't think so, because I just think that it's one of the reasons for it being propaganda is that it also is usually untruthful and simple or oversimplified, I think James said.
Okay.
So I think that's just one of the boxes that you check to say, okay, yeah, this is propaganda. Because I guess also along with that comes the intention, right? Is it intentional or not? Because somebody could intentionally be saying something untruthful versus, you know, accidentally saying something untruthful. And that happens all the time in music, and probably film too, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Maybe not as much, but
I would say at least as much.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially today. I don't know. Maybe back in the 50s, not as much.
Right. Yeah. But yeah. So to answer your question, no, it's just one of the check boxes.
Okay. That's interesting to me. Yeah.
So what we're coming up with is all these characteristics, and really it needs all of the characteristics in order to classify as propaganda.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how about this? Why don't we continue the conversation by listening to your second choice?
Okay. So this one is, what do you guys think? Is it or isn't it propaganda? And we might need to explain it a little bit, but go for it.
Do you want to explain before or after?
Sure. Okay. So the song is Billie Eilish, All the Good Girls Go to Hell. And it's kind of, it appeals to the idea of, basically what it is a song about climate change. And they've said that it is. The producer, Billie's brother, has said that it's about climate change.
I would have never guessed that from the title.
I know, of course. And when you listen to it, you might not either. But it kind of puts God and Satan talking to each other, being like, look at humanity and what they're doing to the world, and saying like what are we supposed to do with this? Like, they're killing themselves, kind of. So that's basically it.
All right.
And it's interesting.
Very cool. Without further ado, then.
My Lucifer is lonely, standing there, killing time. Can't commit to anything but a crime. Leaders on vacation, an open invitation. Animals, evidence. Pearly gates look more like a picket fence. Once you get inside,
We should probably pause it. So she's saying my Lucifer is lonely. So like Lucifer on one side and angel on the other side. So she's saying the angel isn't there. So she's like, she's being Satan in the song, I think is what it's supposed to mean. And then she's saying that he's standing there killing time. He can't commit to anything but a crime. Peter's on vacation, an open invitation, Peter guarding the gates of heaven. And then she randomly says animals evidence, which I guess is supposed to be about, I don't know, cruelty to animals. I'm not sure. Doesn't really explain it. So this is part of the question. And then she goes on and says, pearly gates look more like a picket fence. Once you get inside them, got friends, but can't invite them. So it's kind of like a smack at heaven, I guess, in a way, which I'm not really sure what use that has in this song. But yeah, going on.
Hills burn in California. My turn to ignore ya. Don't say I didn't warn ya. All the good girls go to hell, 'cause even God herself has enemies. And once the water starts to rise and heaven's out of sight, she'll want the devil on her team.
Should we pause? So I feel like the pre-chorus is pretty obvious. Hills burn in California, my turn to ignore ya. Don't say I didn't warn ya. So my turn to ignore ya, I guess if she's speaking as Satan, it's his turn. Or maybe this is the thing, she's not like clear who she is when she's saying that. It could be God saying that, right? Or what she's trying to say. That God's saying, I'm going to ignore you now. That's probably it, right? Because I think there's more of an idea that we ignore God a lot.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what all the good girls go to hell is supposed to mean. I guess that's just saying like people that we thought were good are actually not good because they hurt the environment. And then she says, because even God herself, which,
I didn't catch that.
She's tearing that apart, which is, I guess, a theme in a lot of pop music right now.
Right.
Ariana Grande has something like that too. But it's saying that God has enemies, and once the waters start to rise and heaven's out of sight, so a nice little, what do you call that imagery there? She'll want the devil on her team. So again, referring to God as a her, and then saying that God and the devil are going to team up because the waters are rising and climate change is ruining everything. Any thoughts?
Yes.
That's so funny. I would never have like got to that just without your help. Like I think maybe that's a part of art, is that artists don't want it to be easy for you to interpret their art. Generally, it's like it will throw something on a canvas and then it'll be like, okay, and that means this, but no one else could get there unless you told them it means that.
Yeah. Well, for this song, it was fans that thought that it was about climate change, and then it was only confirmed by the producer. So I never would have gotten it if I hadn't looked it up.
Well, I mean, again, that it points to her talent as an artist, that she can hide the ball so well. I think it makes me think of Shakespeare, where, Shakespeare, anyone can, pretty much anybody and everybody, and it has been done, can say that Shakespeare is on their team, because Shakespeare was really just saying this. Shakespeare was really just saying he was just a Catholic making Catholic points. He was just a homosexual making, closeted homosexual points. He was actually a woman that was a feminist that was making, points about feminism. Everything and anything someone is attributed to Shakespeare at this point. And I think it's a testament to how talented he was at his craft. Maybe Eilish, maybe I'm not saying she's a Shakespeare, but maybe she has some of that.
I feel like it's good writing. She does a really good job of using a few words to evoke a lot of thought, right? And meaning. But at what point is it just throwing something at a wall and making it confusing and not really saying anything? That's a tough line, I think, sometimes. But this song, I do think she is getting across what she's trying to say. relatively well compared to a lot of other music right now.
And what she wants to say is that climate change is real. You're ruining the planet, sort of thing.
Yeah, it seems like she's just trying to say that we're ruining the planet and we're stupid. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that it definitely differs from the Union song in that, like, it's not presenting one like obvious choice, you know, that you have to come to, or like it's just impossible to come to any kind of another conclusion than the one that the singer wants you to come to in the Union one. And this one, like, yeah, it brings in a whole lot of thing and it gets you really thinking. So I definitely think it's much more artistic. I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a good song still, but
right.
I think, yeah, it would be more on the level of art.
Yeah.
Okay. So art is more something that makes you have to think a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm. I think something definitely I would say it's definitely a part of it. Something that makes you have to consider, you know, something that if you can discuss it, then I think you're appreciating it. And so, I mean, you can appreciate art. That's part of it, right? So yeah, that's off to her, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's
it doesn't, it lends itself to further analysis.
Right.
And I don't think you require an analysis of the first piece you played. You really, it's just there and it exists.
Yeah,
okay,
true.
You play it, you move on. It's a theme song for unions everywhere, and then you move on. This one, you really have a hard time moving on. At least I do. I mean, you want to be like, what's going on here? And I think the fact that the producer confirmed that it's about climate change actually weakens it more, because then you can kind of just stop analyzing it. You can just be like, okay, well, yeah, that's what it's about. Move on.
Interesting.
If Eilish and her team had just let everyone go, like, Shakespeare is great because Shakespeare's dead. he can't confirm or deny anything.
Right.
If Eilish and his team had not confirmed or denied what was going on, then I think it would have been a stronger artistic statement.
Yeah. Yeah, true. And propaganda is pretty obvious. Is it always obvious?
That's a good question. Well, how about we play my propaganda choice, and you guys can tell me.
Although I do want to have a quick question for Casey. Maybe we don't have to answer. We can go straight into yours, but maybe we can follow up with this for the next one. It's kind of a follow-up to my last question. So if, like, propaganda has to be part of the criteria is not true, then is part of the criteria for art, does it have to be true? Because I don't know. I don't know we would consider, obviously there's climate change, but obviously God and the devil are not teaming up to, you know, kill humans. So it's like, is it still art if it's not true?
And so I don't know. I mean, it depends on how you define art, right? I guess we should have defined all of our terms first. But I almost think that song is more propaganda towards almost atheism or tearing down the idea of God in a religious context than climate change even. But was it intended that way? I don't know. Was it just written by somebody who just doesn't believe in God and that's just their view on things and the way that they wanted to get their song to sound? I don't know.
Okay. If I was going to answer that, then, like, if I was Peter threw that to me, I would say, Peter, why don't you throw it one more time and try and be as simple as possible?
Yeah.
Have a simple brain.
Well, the question is, if part of the definition of propaganda is that it's telling an untruth, presenting a false narrative, if a song like this one by Billie Eilish is saying something not true, if the message is not true, can it be art? Is it still art if it's not true?
Yeah, I would say that it is still art if it's not true in some cases. I think untruth is one of the characteristics of propaganda, like we had said. I would agree with that partial definition. But I've watched many movies that I thought were the message of it were just horrendous, like just a terrible message. But yet I still thought that it was art. I think my definition of propaganda is that it has to be very simple, and you're pushing this message to the detriment of all else. And so if you're doing that, you really want people to understand what your message is. You want someone to take like here's point A, B, and C, and I'm just going to shove it down your throat because I want to make sure you understand point A, B, and C. So if you're having trouble understanding if it's propaganda or not, and you're really trying to analyze it, like we are with Billie Eilish's work here, I think it probably wasn't made as propaganda. I think that her team now might be trying to retrograde it, like retroactively fit it into the propaganda box because they're defining it so simply. I think if they had said something maybe a little more nuanced, like, oh, well, it could be about that. There's definitely some things that we're talking about that reference that, but I'm not going to say it's about climate change because it's about a lot of things. I think art is really about a lot of things, and some of those things can be wrong.
Okay.
Thoughts?
I mean, I think I definitely agree. There's definitely a lot of things I would consider artistic that are not really presenting well, maybe it's presenting a flawed understanding of the truth, or like a broken understanding of it. And I guess, technically speaking, I mean, it's hard for any of us to speak completely, especially if you're doing something as long as a movie or maybe a book. You're going to present some of your opinions and your just your perception of the world, which might be technically flawed or are mistaken. So I would probably say, if I was going to answer my own question, that I think that there can still be untruths in it, and still be art. But of course, I think that being said, art is the pursuit of the good, the true, and the beautiful. So I think that has to be definitely a large part of it, is that you are actually pursuing. Maybe it's not that you've reached it and that you're presenting a completed good, true, and beautiful piece, but you're pursuing that. And so I think that the fact that, I don't know if she wrote the song or not, but if she did, that she's like, she's, it's not terrible to listen to, So, and I think that she has some talent. And so like she's pouring herself into the song. So that in a way is a pursuit of the good, the true, and beautiful. So there we go. That's how I would answer my own question.
I like that definition of art, and maybe we end with that. Could this be part one, and maybe we reconvene next week or something like that? Would you guys be open to that?
I could do that.
Okay, great. Okay, because I think there's a lot more to go through, and we're running out of time. But I wanted to say that definition, that art is the true, the good, and the beautiful, I like a lot, but I also think it's very restrictive. Is that too restrictive, do you think, Casey, or what are your thoughts to that definition?
Well, it was the pursuit of the good, true, and beautiful, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now I'm just trying to think of whether can you see that or not all the time in art? Like, do you know if that person is actually pursuing the good, true, and the beautiful? Because if they're far from God and they are trying to pursue it, it might look like it's not, I think it could. So I agree that art has to do with the pursuit of the good, the true, and the beautiful. And it should lead you to the good, the true, and the beautiful too. There's a lot more, I'm sure, but
yeah, well, there's a lot more that could be said. But what about something that is undeniably let's see, I don't want I don't want to just ask a leading question, but I'm a little not upset. I'm wary of.
I'm angry.
I'm wary of us leaving out too many things that are made quite incredibly. Like I'm thinking of a lot of Roman Polanski's films, for example. Have you ever watched not Breathless, but Repulsion, or Rosemary's Baby, or and no one's ever said that. Because some of these directors, they're not pursuing the good or the true. Well, maybe they might say they're going after what's true. I think they would go, like, these great directors would be on board with truth, but they're not going after the beautiful. And the works that they do are so they are so undeniably impressive, at least to me. And the fact that they hold up, like you all have heard of Roman Polanski, for example. Yeah. So it's not like they're pikers, generally right. Propagandists don't last as long. Do we necessarily, is there maybe something else to art besides, like, maybe for Catholics, that's, if you want to live the Catholic faith, then you should create art that pursues the true, the good, and the beautiful. But is that necessarily for all artists?
Is that a question that we're going to be asking next time? Is this like, tune in next time and we'll answer the question? That's a long question.
I'm trying to keep propaganda against this in my mind and also think about your question, and I'm confusing myself.
Yeah, it's a big one.
But I think it comes down to, is it high art or fine art versus art? Like there's dumpster art too, right? So maybe that isn't necessarily pursuing the good, the true, and the beautiful. Maybe it's just trying to pursue some type of truth. But I think it's a great question. Where's the line between propaganda and that art still? Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, propaganda is easier to define. I think defining the art bucket or not art. Like, for example, if Roman Polanski is not an artist, he's definitely not a propagandist. If we say his art is not art, it's still not propaganda. Because propaganda is really pretty easy in my mind to put it down. I think easy does not make it less prevalent. And that was the point I was going to be making soon. And hopefully next week will come up that it's really, propaganda is incredibly prevalent in our day and age. And there's not much art out there. And at least in my opinion, I'll bounce it off.
Gotcha.
But I still think that it might not be quite as simple as saying the true, the good, and the beautiful. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. But why don't we address that next week? What do you all think?
Sounds
good. Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, Casey, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for agreeing to come back. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, guys.
All right. Peter, so good chatting again.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Casey. We'll see you around.
All right,
everyone. We're the Pinedo Brothers, Catholic filmmaking brothers, working to revitalize the world of Catholic art through film. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Pinedo Brothers Podcast, an artist podcast for Catholics. We hope you enjoyed it, and if so, please consider subscribing, and commenting below. That really helps. This episode was edited and recorded by me, JP. Makeup was done by no one, if you couldn't tell. The Pinedo Brothers are Catholic filmmaking brothers working to revitalize the world of Catholic art through film. For more information on us, check us out at pinedobrothers.com. Thanks again.